Well, welcome all to this industry forum discussion on recruiting talent for Australia, opportunities and barriers, organized by the IMCRC Training Centre in Surface Engineering for Advanced Materials, or SEAM. My name is Professor Alan Duffy, Director of the Space Technology and Industry Institute here at Swinburne, and it is my pleasure to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land which we meet, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I want to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and extend those respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Now, in this session, we'll hear from our guests. I'm going to direct some questions to them, hopefully have a bit of back and forth such that the hybrid scenario today will facilitate. And then we'll make sure that you can ask your questions, and that of course includes online as well. And your questions online will be relayed by Vesna later on. So please get thinking of those questions, and questions I'm sure there will be, as in the next 90 minutes, we will hope to cover the challenges and opportunities in Australia for key areas in additive manufacturing, the training of a skilled workforce, bringing about greater workplace diversity, the kinds of strategies to attract and onshore the best talent, and all of this, of course, during a pandemic. Now, it's fitting that such a topic is hosted by SEAM as an IMCRC training center that supports 25 postgrads and 6 postdocs in an advanced and growing sector. These industry relevant projects also represent over $2 million per year to the host institution Swinburne. But how do we replicate such success sector-wide across the manufacturing landscape? And how will we prepare our nation for the post-pandemic world of work, variants permitting? Joining me to answer these questions and more is Professor Virginia Kilborn, Swinburne's Deputy Vice Chancellor of Research and Enterprise Acting and Chief Scientist as the substantive role. Our Professor Virginia Kilborn is working to further education, research, policy and equity at Swinburne and beyond, and is also my boss. So you get the easy question. No, just kidding. Jason Coonan is the Deputy CEO of the Additive Manufacturing CRC, the IMCRC, catalyzing the transformation of Australian manufacturing through projects enabled by innovation and collaboration between Australian industry and universities. Prior to joining IMCRC, Jason had senior roles at the Young and Well CRC and the University of Melbourne, leading industry engagement and commercialization operations. We have Peter Richings joining us online, is the director of the McTaggart Scott Australia. He is an ex-Royal Navy helicopter test pilot and the commander of 771 Squadron, the Royal Navy Search and Rescue Squadron based at Culdrose. You can find the MTS, so McTaggart Scott Australia's equipment on Collins-class submarines. Weight is crucial for submarines, and in addition, the equipment sits in seawater for most of its life, so advanced materials, unsurprisingly, are of great interest to them. As I promised, I'm going to give the absolute easiest starting question to my boss. But Virginia, would you be able to explore the role of education at a dual sector university like Swinburne, and in particular for driving that greater uptake in skills around that manufacturing piece?
Yeah, I think a university like Swinburne, where we do have the vocational and the higher education, is a really fantastic opportunity for us to upskill in both in very industry relevant areas, but also then developing the skills further to create the industries of the future. And so we've got the vocational area where you're really learning those deep skills that will be immediately applicable to industry. So these skills have actually been assessed by the government as relevant and required. And so you know when you're coming to do your vocational education that you're learning in an area where there is a skills shortage and a skills requirement. And so I think that's a really good thing for people who are interested in going out and working to come into university and to have the confidence that you're going to be able to do that. With the higher education, we have a much more of a variety of offerings, but then you can take your education to a much higher level as well. And I think the SEAM is a really wonderful example of that. So you can go through your undergraduate degree and come through and do some postgraduate training with industry so that you're understanding the needs for the future of industry and helping to do research, which is then going to set you up not only for your own future career, but then setting up the future of that industry. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity for students.
Couldn't agree more. We also have our moonshot, where we try to secure that work experience opportunity for our students. Now, Jason, maybe can you speak firstly to the role of the IMCRC in bridging between academia, and I'm literally going to point at you as the representative of academia, and Peter representing industry, who we'll speak to in a second.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Alan. And I guess listening to the presentation to now, I think we're really fortunate enough to sort of be beneficiaries of not only the importation of skills and capabilities, but also the local development of skills and capabilities. And that leads me into, I guess, describing what the Innovative Manufacturing CRC is, which is really a joint venture between government, industry, and our research organisations like Swinburne University. And we're really here to catalyse innovative projects. And in our case, it's in manufacturing industry. And I guess to date, we've done that across 60 to 70 projects with a similar number of industry partners, investing about $40 million worth of Commonwealth funding, and have turned that into roughly $220 million of project value and output. And we'll see that funnel into the manufacturing ecosystem over the next 5 to 10 years. And I think the importance of that particular activity really is largely due to this connecting role that an organisation like ours plays between research and industry, and allows the up and coming workforce, you know, as they've come out of their undergraduate degrees and starting to specialise and to understand, well, if I'm going to be an innovator, if I'm going to be a scientist, whether that's in a university or increasingly in industry now, you know, that's really important for driving the prosperity of Australia, as we all know. But to actually play a role in bringing industry and research organisations together, so that, you know, those students can have that experience working with industry, but vice versa, so that industry also have an experience working with research organisations. You know, quite often they're quite two different sets of experiences and requirements, you know, that we all know. And it's really important that we create these opportunities for the two different sectors to work together and to learn how to collaborate effectively, because that's when we'll really activate the power of our community.
Absolutely. Now, then I'll turn to you, Peter, joining us online. You've been at that interface point of industrial R&D and collaboration with universities for years. I wonder if you might just share some of your thoughts on this, and, you know, what's good exemplars, and maybe point out some opportunities for improvement. Can we put it that way?
Well, I'll just pick up on what Jason said, because I think very often it is a question of seeing what both sides want out of the project, and I think that's probably one of the problems that if we say, let's call them two partners, one partner wants to do research and produce papers very often to get themselves recognised, and we're trying to look for outcomes in more specifically get it out into industry. And again, the problem is trying to raise it.
Peter, sorry, just could you bring your microphone just a little closer? I'm just struggling to hear you, sorry.
How's that? Any better? No. Yes? Good?
Yes.
No good.
Sorry, please continue.
How's that? Is that any better?
Oh, no, I didn't want to interrupt you. You were actually doing okay when you brought it a little closer. It just picked up a little more.
Is that okay at the moment now?
Yes, that's fine.
Good. So again, one of the problems is that industry is looking for TRL 789, and very often academia is starting down at 1, 2, 3, and it's trying to bridge the gap, and very often it's actually funding that gap to get something from one end of the spectrum up to the other. At the end of the day, we're a commercial organization and we have to get products out the door, and we've got to get it to a customer, and the customer is going to want it to, they're not going to buy something that no one else has used very often. So I think that's one of the main challenges, to get from one end to the other. And as Jason mentioned, funding is important. We don't always want to pay for getting it from TRL2 to TRL8.
So you need someone to de-risk essentially that pathway. Virginia, I wonder about these larger projects and this engagement across industry, and particularly at the university side. But how do we ensure the equality of opportunity for all to participate in these kinds of projects?
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting question. So in Victoria, if we're thinking about equality and gender equality, we have a Gender Equality Act. And so all companies need to work underneath that act, which requires you to record certain things and take certain actions when it comes to gender equality. But I think it's broader than gender equality that you're talking about here.
It is, yep.
And it's equality of opportunity. And so this can come in many forms, and it has to be a really active process. So this is not something that will come about by just opening your doors and saying, just come in, it'll be fine. You have to actually go out there and make actions that make people feel welcome, but also are adapting to people's certain situations and their abilities and their opportunities. So for example, you can think about the whole process from hiring someone or getting someone on your team to working with them, to asking for projects and what the outcomes might be. So when we think about this within Swinburne, we have, we try to advertise our positions, but what happens in a job ad? What's the wording of that job ad? Does it say you must be here from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day, and that's just in there, but in fact the requirements of the job may be that you could work from home part-time, or the position could be part-time. So just by looking at the wording and the requirements that are listed in the job ad, you could be actually cutting off part of the population from even applying in the first place. When you're looking at the selection, what are you looking at? What are the attributes? What do you see as merit? And it's really important to look at that. So you might see someone who have a huge amount of industry experience or have 1 million publications. But what about that person who's been a key contributor to all of those papers, or a key contributor in other areas, which would then fit very, very well into your team? So it doesn't help to hire 20 people that look exactly like yourself. You want as much diversity on your team, so you have diversity of thought, diversity of ability, and diversity of backgrounds. There's a lot of research that shows the more diverse your team is, the better results that you get. And then, of course, in your work environment, you want to make sure that you are welcoming of people. And that might be having meetings at times that don't involve, pick up and drop off from school, or maybe there's particular religious holidays where you might need to be accommodating for your staff. Making sure that you have a welcoming environment so that people are talking and acting in a respectful manner to each other. And when you have issues raised, that is done respectfully as well. And people understand what that culture is. So building that really inclusive culture will then help you to get the best results. So when you're working with students and with academia and with industry, there's actually quite a mix of different areas there. And so it's something that all of the employers and supervisors do really need to take active focus on.
So one area, Jason, that the diversity of the workforce researchers is important as we plan for this a more automated future where we move to AI and machine learning. We don't want to bake in biases or essentially both from the training data, but also just the people doing this coding. So is this future of digitized automation, is that where you see some of the big opportunities for IMCRC?
Yeah, absolutely. And any organisation that really wants to compete on a global scale in Australia, I think innovation is an amazing strategy to be competitive for the future. And diversity is so important to successful innovation. So the more different inputs you can get, that innovation beast is very hungry from that perspective. So the more inputs you can get, different inputs, really optimizes that innovative output. And yeah, Alan, you're exactly right. I think we're seeing globally a huge tidal wave of technologies, which is probably already broken, sometimes wrapped up in a term called Industry 4.0. But, things that we're hearing about almost commonplace now: artificial intelligence, big data, automation, industrial Internet of Things. All of these, it's a beautiful spectrum of technologies that we as Australians don't always have to think about reinventing the wheel. With this our local workforce development and workforce that we import from overseas, we can use that talent to find new applications for these technologies in Australia to help Australia to be more competitive. And that's really where I sort of see tying a few of these parts of the conversation today together, really to drive us forward as a nation through the implementation of technologies, where that knowledge can come from overseas.
So certainly the idea of the Industry 4.0 is a paradigm shifting one. So Peter, I might turn to you. What do you see as the role of these kinds of forward-looking, future-facing kinds of innovations, and then really the appetite from the business side to undertake what could be quite a transformational journey?
I agree, and just picking up, we've been trying hard to innovate on the additive manufacturing side. We've done a couple of projects prior to the SEAM one, both looking at things like nickel alloy bronze. And from a industry point of view, for submarines, we use a lot of nickel alloy bronze. Lots of people talk about 3D printing, but they're normally talking about other materials apart from that. So that's one area that we've tried to think out of the box and have a look and see what can be done. We've done a lot of coating trials, and again, if you look at it from our industry's point of view, we're sticking something in seawater, and the tendency is for it to corrode. And if we can do things that slow that down and extend the life, it's not particularly good for our bottom line, because it means we don't refurbish things as quickly as we used to, but it does mean that the customer is happy because things will last longer in that area. So we've got sort of the bedrock business case going through with our work that we refurbish items, but we're trying to get people to think out of the box as to how we can improve the product and extend the life of it. We come up with ideas. Our next challenge is actually to get the end user and the customer to accept it. And as I'm sure you're more than well aware, trying to get items that have been wire additive manufactured through the regulatory process is a challenge, because there's no guidelines there, or the guidelines are just coming in. Everyone talks about 3D printing, but there's a reluctance, particularly in defence, to adopt it and use it, because they all hasn't been proven. We've got to stick with what we know.
Right.
Sorry, let me just add, I see the future is bright, and there's a lot more things we can do. We're trying to have a look at more at composites, and if you look at both on the defence, aircraft are probably leading the way at using new materials. Ships are more stuck in what they've been used to, and submarines, there's a great resistance to do anything, because it hasn't been proven yet, and they want to leave it for even longer. But we've got to move forward, and I think the challenge is for industry to work more closely with universities. We've gained a lot of traction because of all the data that Swinburne in particular produced, helped us persuade the end user, the customer, that we had all the answers. So it helped us a big way to actually be working with a university that had all the information that we needed.
That's wonderful to hear. I think the idea of certain sectors being more amenable to new technology adoption, be it composites or new manufacturing techniques. Certainly, Virginia, we can look to space as one of our shared passions, fair to say, as an exemplar of that forward focus, and maybe share a little bit about Swinburne's strategic focus now in space.
Yeah, I think the space industry is a really exciting one. It's obviously accelerating at a really fast speed, and advanced manufacturing within the space industry is, dare I say, taking off. You knew it was going to happen. So it really, what we're looking at are new lightweight composites, for example, new ways, new electronics, and new things like receivers and ways of communication, such as quantum communication, which are moving incredibly rapidly through the sector. And so with that, we need the deep skills and the deep understanding of the fundamentals of the, for example, the physics of say quantum, or how the materials, characterizing the materials, but then working with industry to solve the problems that they actually need to solve. So it might be great that we come up with something that will, I don't know, look at something at a very fine detail from, from the moon, let's say. But if nobody wants to do that, then it doesn't matter. So what is it that that humanity needs? What is it that we require? What are those big challenges? And then the university sector, with our understanding with the research and an opportunity to educate the next generation, can then work with industry to help solve those problems and really find those applications where it's going to make a difference.
So one of those opportunities you say in the education space, I think is quite exciting, is this idea of those small additional skills or context setting, the micro-credentialing, the space products you yourself have actually been leading. So maybe just in a brief nutshell, how do you see the roles of taking deep expertise and then tailoring at the end, so to speak, or even as a mature worker, coming back and getting those little tweaks to one skill set?
Well, as we know, and as we've seen over the pandemic, there is a skills shortage in Australia. And so one way to address that is through the talent programs that we've heard about earlier, and bringing in people. But when we're unable to do that for various reasons, we actually have a really highly skilled workforce in Australia. And one way that we can address the skills that we need is by taking people in a particular sector and upskilling them with the skills that they need to apply to another sector. So space is a perfect example here. So space, you need, in the space industry, you need people with skills from plumbing to electronics to the highest, mechanical engineering and electrical engineering, aeronautics. But you also need IT and so on. So how do you then take someone who has had a career in IT and then apply it to the space industry? By then providing those skills and training so that they understand the sector and can come in and get a job in the industry. So I think that is a huge opportunity for universities to be able to then fill that skills gap, which is sometimes called as just-in-time education. So you're in a sector working along, but realise that the skills that you have can be applied to another sector. But how do you move across to that sector? Come and do some just-in-time or some upskill at the university. So something like Swinburne, where we have a lot of these courses available. You can come and do your upskill and then move over into that other sector where you're applying the knowledge and skills from one sector into another. I think that's a really exciting opportunity, because once again, you're getting that diversity. You might get better innovation because you've been doing something a particular way in a different sector. They've been doing it a different way. Join together and see how to do it better.
Peter, maybe just reflecting on that point, when you are looking for candidates, what are those skills, the qualifications? Certainly as a small business, I think technically you might be, but at least in Australia. What are you looking for? And is the discussion we've just heard part of the thinking that goes on in terms of their expertise and range of qualifications?
It comes back to we need the sort of bedrock of mechanical engineers is our core business. But as I said, we also need people who will think out of the box, and we need some diversity, as you mentioned. It's interesting. We've been having interns for their internship over the Christmas period for the last number of years. And up till now, we've always had male applicants coming through. We've actually got our first female one this over this Christmas period. And again, picking up on the diversity side, there aren't that many mechanical engineers coming through. It tends to be a male-dominated area. So be interesting to see where our female mechanical engineer ends up. But she's certainly working hard to diversify in a number of different areas. To more specifically answer your question, and I see that Colin Hall asked a similar question about the uptake of PhDs in particular. To be blunt, we don't particularly need PhDs. We need mechanical engineers who have a solid grounding, whereas and correct me if I'm wrong, but generally PhDs are more focused in areas and want to develop their skills in that area. We need at the moment we don't really diversify as much as we should into R&D, and that comes back to commercial reality. So what we're looking for is and because you mentioned we are small, we also have a problem with taking on less experienced people. And so normally we would look for someone who has experience in the field, mechanical, and mainly because we use hydraulics, have some hydraulic experience as well. And that's the starting point. What I need is actually for someone to fit into a small team, which I think it comes back to what Victoria is saying. You know, we need someone who fits in, who isn't going to go out their own way. We need a team player to act in a small team.
So maybe then
the question. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, we'll ask questions in a bit. Actually, just this is good that you're preparing your hand. It's good because I'm nearly done. So please remember. So I want to then throw to Jason the idea of the skills piece, as well as, of course, the IP generation in these programs. You know, how does IMCRC strategy work in terms of both that IP development, but also the personnel development?
Yeah. I think it's a great question, Alan, and I'd probably just pick up on one of the things Peter was just saying, that it's not always from an industry perspective the PhD is the answer. Yeah. And so partly in answer to your question, one of the things we've done at IMCRC is realizing that I call it the skills smorgasbord, and what we've tried to do is develop a diversity of programs that enables industry to get the talent they want at a level that fits their particular circumstance. And so, of course, we're a CRC, and PhD level qualifications are a big output of ours and are really important. But we've also focused on master's outcomes with our research and training organisations, and typically that involves a professional development element where someone is coming out of a job working there for 15 years and taking that next level perhaps to change into a different sector. And also internships. I can't espouse internships enough, to tell you the truth. Especially for a young researcher coming out of academia, it's a wonderful program for them to transition out, but also for industries who perhaps don't have a strong track record or capability to engage in big collaborations. So sometimes when I talk about the type of stuff we do, that's $6-10 million programs, 30, 40 people on a team, 6 and 7 years. There's not that many companies in Australia that can participate in that type of collaboration. They're fantastic, but they're also not all that common. But in my experience, I've found particularly SMEs, Australian SMEs, can really access and understand that type of internship. Typically 6 months or so, it allows a dip a toe into the water, and I think more often than not, it's a great outcome for both parties. But yeah, that diversity of different types of solutions for different types of circumstances is really important for us all to sort of keep thinking about, how do we increase the sophistication of this this ecosystem that we're all developing in this room together.
So Virginia, I might let you close before we open to questions from our audience, both online and in person. On that opportunity that the intern we've just heard, and there's an APRA intern scheme, which is wonderful. It's a national scheme. I've been involved in both sides. In fact, I've found it exceptionally valuable. But Swinburne, it's fair to say, is really stepping up to the mark now in terms of the internship opportunities.
Yeah, that's right. So Swinburne now has a guarantee that every student who comes through will have a work experience, and that might be an internship, or it might be an in-house work placement, could be a project, an industry project. And so you don't really have to wait till you graduate now to work in industry. In fact, the students won't be. They'll all be working with industry before they graduate. I think this is a huge thing for Swinburne and also for the university sector, because quite often what we see is students coming to university with an idea of the area that they love. So it might be science, it might be physics or astrophysics, it might, whatever it might be, engineering, already had work placements, but then really being able to apply your skills to a real world problem, in your first year when you come to university, first or second year, and then going, oh, actually, I didn't realize that for physics, I was really interested in quantum physics, but now I've done some, say, water monitoring as one of my projects with Melbourne Water, and realize that all of those skills and knowledge have come together to work in this area. Maybe that's the area I want to work in. The other thing that we offer is professional placement. So you can go out for 6 months or for a year and work in industry. That's a really interesting opportunity for students. Whether or not you like your placement, you're learning so much about the workplace. And, another example is we have physics students going to work for NAB. And you may not think that's a normal matching, but the students find that incredibly valuable. We've had a lot of physics students who've realised that their skills in analysis and data analysis are highly sought after in the banking sector, and NAB love to get our physics students now. As you were saying before, this is a really good way for industry to understand the possibilities from students as well. And so I think this is a really good opportunity all round.
All right, on that very positive note, where was our question in the room, and then we'll prepare for the online. Yes, please. Oh, actually, how are we going to do this, Vesna? We did not speak about this before.
I'm right here.
There. You sounded like you came from behind me. It terrified me. Are we going to pass the mics to in person? Okay. Well, maybe in that case, we'll start with an online question first, and if you could just come down to Vesna at the front with the microphone.
Well, we have an online question from Colin Hall, but Tom sitting next to me has the same question, so I'm going to pass the mic on to him.
Did he look over your shoulder and cheat? Did he just read it off the screen? Yeah.
Hello, everyone. So my name's Tom. I'm a postdoctoral researcher here at SEAM at Swinburne. And when I was thinking of a question to ask, Vesna was like, do you have a question? And then showed me this question from Colin Hall. And I was super happy to see this question because I was doing some quick Googling to try and get my stats right. And Colin's already looked it up. This question, I heard at a panel about 5 years ago. So this is a problem that's sort of existed for 5 years. This says PhDs in industry is very low in Australia. So typically less than 50% of PhDs, from my understanding, get employed in industry after completing their PhD in Australia versus approximately 80% for the rest of the world. So how do we get Australian businesses to understand the values that can be given to them by PhD graduates for their business?
All right, we'll maybe start with who wants to take that first. I'm just curious about the nature of that stat and whether that's actually a problem in the first place. But anyways, we'll maybe park that, because maybe we're just all going into research first, and in astronomy we almost invariably will do. But who wants to take that first? Virginia?
Why don't I give the academics view?
Yeah.
As someone who's got a PhD and then stayed in academia. Look, I think this is a really fantastic question, because you have typically PhD graduates in Australia have come through and they're supervised by PhD graduates who are in academia. And so how do you then give the students the skills and experience and confidence to go out into industry to apply their knowledge and really the methodologies and that leadership that they've learned through a PhD? So maybe I can just talk again about what we're doing here at Swinburne. And we have a new program called Impact PhD, where students are actually coming in and working with industry as part of their PhD project. This not only helps the student work on real world problems, but we're helping the industry as well as part of that PhD program. We actually have targets that, that are increasing, that our students have the opportunity to then go and do these internships as part of their PhDs. This is not just for PhDs that may be more industry focused that you can imagine, so such as PhD in some sort of engineering and so on, where you can immediately see the applications. But we have had a lot of students in areas such as astrophysics, Alan, where they've gone out and done an internship, for example, with a satellite company or with data analysis companies, and then have in fact had job offers after they've graduated and gone on and been employed there. I think this is the real key, is to how do we connect our students whilst they're here and give them the skills and confidence to go out and apply their skills in the real world. And it may be that, a student then ends up coming back and working in a university or in a research organisation, but going out and having those skills in and applying them to real world and industry, current industry problems is always going to help you no matter what career you choose in the future.
Yeah, I'd welcome them to come back in with that knowledge gained from industry. Jason, do you want to reflect on that, and then maybe we'll throw it to Peter?
Yeah, it's a really complex question, right? And in fact, please don't quote me on this. I thought it was actually far less PhD graduates actually go into industry. I thought only about 10% do, and 90% in Australia stay in academia. I think, yeah, I think. And that, that's been a challenge, we know, for a really long time. And there's a number of, whether it's causative or correlative, I don't know. But there's a number of things we probably should unpack about that. It's probably a really good forum. The first thing is the amount that this country invests in innovation. We all know that at a GDP level, we're far less than most other similar type of peer economies we like to compare ourselves to. So we don't have the R&D happening out there for our graduates to go to. So, I think that's one of the big challenges. But why is that? Probably we'd love to see our industry see innovation as much more important strategy for global competitiveness than they do at the moment. So, once you see leaders understanding that innovation is important, and then, keep delving under, leaders then need to understand what is innovation. Is that a fair assumption? Do our leaders really understand what innovation is? So there's a bit to unpack there before we start to see that you can activate that machine in Australia, that then there are destinations for our PhD graduates to go to. And so I think it's a little bit of column A in leadership, a little bit of column B in investment. That comes from leadership, of course. I did a PhD in neuroscience, wandered out into industry, and now working in manufacturing. So I guess I'm sort of living proof that you can move around a little bit. But yeah, by and large, if memory serves, I thought it was a very low proportion that actually enter into industry.
And then Peter, your thoughts from the industry side.
I was actually contemplating a different statistic because I think it is key to the problem. And I don't know the actual number, but the vast majority of industry within Australia are within SMEs. And almost by definition, the SMEs don't have the necessary wherewithal to fund R&D as much as perhaps some other countries do. I'd been speculating. One of the problems is we don't necessarily know what we don't know, and we actually need some experts at times to solve problems that we've just been living with, and that's where I see, particularly, we're back to collaboration rather than PhDs coming into industry, but. Again, come back to how we assess people. We want someone who has the capability to interact with the team to do what we need to do. But we would certainly welcome a PhD, but they might need to accept that they might not be using all their skills that they've learned along the way, and they might have to, as you have, Jason, diversify. And I think that it comes back to almost cross-pollination, as to you never know where you might find an answer to the problem you're looking for, or the problem you're trying to solve.
It certainly sounds like the one broadly encapsulated problem here is the ecosystem. This idea that we're neither broad enough with enough touch points between industry and academia, and within industry as well, and reaching critical mass of focus areas, but also deep enough in terms of that experience of engagement over years, perhaps. With I might just turn to you, Jason, to solve that problem. I'm hoping you're going to say IMCRC is going to take that. That's just
yeah. No, you're right, Alan. You know, one of the big things is, you know, if you think about it from a social network perspective, you know, it's critical that the ecosystem has the connections in it such that technology transfer is efficient. And you know, we live in this wonderful country, but geez, it's bloody big. And look, you know, I don't know whether the Western Australians like us or not at the moment, but you know, there's all these things happening that keep us from connecting, you know, as an innovation ecosystem. And it's really important that, you know, universities play a huge role in this. Organisations like the IMCRC play a large role in this, in bringing all the agents together. You know, as we were talking about before, you know, not all companies can justify having a PhD level scientist on their payroll. But geez, you know, there's probably, I can generally sit down and think of a way to collaborate with a university or the CSIRO such that, you know, those organisations can access those skills and importantly, infrastructure. You know, this is the beautiful thing about these places, you know, the one we're sitting on now and the other 38, 39 we've got around the country and CSIRO, is that it's a huge wealth of scientific and technical infrastructure that, you know, we need to keep throwing the doors open to and saying, come in and let us work with you on utilising all this amazing infrastructure and the amazing talent so that we can co-develop solutions together.
I want to touch on co-locating industry and academia, Virginia in particular, but I might just throw this question first. You've been very patiently asking, then if we can return to that point. Yes, please.
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, so this room is full of the PhD students, and Peter's comments about the PhD opinion in industry is really discouraging. That's I feel. Okay, I know it's a harsh reality that industry doesn't want PhDs because they have to pay more through them. And why they need PhD when they can work with the master or bachelor student also. Okay, but like why? If the industry doesn't need the PhD students, and if no one needs PhD students, why there's a need for the global talent program? Why do we want to bring the talent from outside? Why do we want to discourage them? Okay, that's I really feel a pity on myself that I'm doing PhD, and if I want to go to industry in Australia, I have no way to go there. That the industry person is saying me that, no, we have closed doors for PhD. They are not coming in, that's all. So I'm not sure what to say here.
So I think Yeah, I mean, the question about that sort of idea of recruiting and investing in recruiting then in local domestic talent, as you say, all the way up to PhD versus that international piece that the talent visas allow. I think that's a huge question. I might actually start with you, Jason, as sitting at the interface.
Yeah, absolutely. And I absolutely acknowledge what you're saying. And I think I can't help but think it comes back to what we want out of our community and our leaders in industry, that we want to see science and technology and innovation valued. Now, once that starts to happen, then I think the opportunities start to multiply. Because that's what will be required. If we're seeing innovation as a strategy, important to compete. Whether that's in manufacturing or other industries, it's kind of irrelevant for this conversation. And then how do we use the amazing talent that we've got in front of us, to make our community, much more wealthier and healthier.
So, Peter, I might ask you, what would it take, be it through government support measures, to ease and facilitate that kind of opportunity that the PhD program represents to the SME, to small business in particular?
Well, I'd have to go back, and I have to apologise because I missed the cutoff for the global talent visa for how much they need to the salary. Was it 158,000?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah. We don't pay the majority of our people that figure, and so we immediately have a problem there. So we'd actually need to earn more money to be able to pay that level of salary to people, which means that we need to put more things. And so I'm talking from a defence point of view, and we're being pushed to find efficiencies, not to increase costs. So that's part of it. But I would come back on the question of the commentator. We would welcome PhDs. We probably don't have enough challenges for the majority of people who've got a PhD. They're looking on to develop that, whereas we actually have to get stuff out the door back to our customer. So we certainly would welcome them. We would definitely try to match, and we want to increase our capabilities as much as possible. We've touched on skill shortages, but obviously looking to the future, and again, I'm talking from a defence point of view, we need to have skilled mechanical engineers. We need to have people with nuclear experience. We need a complete range of things, and we don't need it in 5 years' time. We actually need to be kicking it off now. And I get frustrated with the 18-month pause that we've got before we actually decide on submarines, which I'm talking about because you can see it behind me. But that's as I see it, the problem is government actually needs to come to the party and come out with a longer-term strategy for what they want, and industry will respond. It shouldn't be the other way around. Industry is responding and telling the government what they should be having. So I think some of it comes back onto the government. I welcome the co-funding government initiatives so that we can get projects underway. But I do think it needs a longer term view, and we need to get the talent pool up now.
Chris, did you want to respond to this point? Okay, well, hang on. I'll just give you this.
I have had some experience with the Global Talent Program because SEAM has been successful in getting 3 people into the country. Now, the number of 150 whatever thousand, the wording on the form is ability to earn. Peter, wherever you are up on the screen, ability to earn that amount. So it doesn't mean that you have to pay them that amount, ability to earn that amount. Now, I have an ability to earn $400,000 a year, right? Like everyone, well, actually, some of the people here probably are earning that now. But the phraseology is ability to earn. So, Peter, don't get stuck up about that, because I assure you that the forms that I filled out have not put in $156,000. Thank you. And I'm sorry to interrupt.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Clarification. Down at the back. Oh, yes.
Hi. When you were answering the question about, well, why doesn't industry employ PhD students? I really thought we had to turn that question around and ask, how come universities don't employ people who've worked in industry on the whole? I know there are some counter examples, but I think that's a really important question for us to address. If we're trying to collaborate with industry, it has to be a both-way street. The easiest way to develop collaborations is often to have worked in a couple of different workforces. You understand both of them. We have a very sort of set protocols. Your average academic, finished their degree, did a PhD, did all the right things, published lots of papers, and then got their academic job if they were lucky. But if you really want to work with industry, you need people who actually know both sides of that equation. So you need people who've actually worked in industry. And Virginia was talking about diversity. Diversity, of course, we think about gender diversity and culture diversity. It's a diversity of experience as well that is important in innovation. And we really need to be seeing that diversity. So how do we change that kind of perception of what an academic is so that it works both ways?
I think that's to you, Virginia.
I'll give it a go. So I think this is actually a great question for Swinburne right at the moment, because one of our current moonshots is to be a global university of best practice. And so what we're looking at is, what does the university of the future look like? And I don't think it looks like, 700 academics in levels A to E lecturing in a classroom. This is not what the university of the future looks like. I absolutely agree that bringing in people from industry, and when I say people from industry, they might be academics who have gone to industry and come back to work at Swinburne and then maybe go and work somewhere else. You don't have to, these days the career is not necessarily you come and work at one place for the rest of your life. What we need to do is, as you say, redevelop models to allow a good career, to allow career progression, and to then look at what are the expectations of different roles within the university. And so there's a big variation in what we expect of what we require in the university. So we need people who understand industry. We need people who have worked there. We also would like our academics to, maybe our academics go and do internships in industry and then continue. I think that would be a fantastic idea, doing sabbaticals in industry and then coming back, and you're much more relevant for the classroom. So I think these new models are exactly what we should be looking at in the university sector. It's actually pretty exciting to think about. Yeah.
We might have to repeat the question.
Okay, so
if you could rephrase it for the audience.
Yeah, so the question is around policies and for example, timelines. So if you have a non-traditional career, how do you then fit into the system? And so this one, the example given was, for example, a DECRA application where you have a short window after your graduation of 5 years to be able to apply for that grant. How do you change policy? Advocacy, evidence, and a long time. No, we really want to do that in a better way. And yeah. So I think the thing is, you've got to have someone who's going to go out and embody that. So if we as a university say this is important to us and we're changing our policies and we lead the way, you need someone to actually, put their money where their mouth is and embody that. And so to change the way that universities work is going to take a very bold leader and people who have that vision and share that vision, and then go along with that vision. The academe is fairly highly structured and has a very long history. So we are at a pretty exciting point in universities where we are thinking of new ways of adapting. And in fact, we have to adapt. the government is telling us we have to adapt. The world is telling us we need to adapt. We've got Google University, we've got, you know, Microsoft, and you can go and get a degree online from a non-university provider, which maybe industry are happy with. And so what is the role of the modern role of a university? This is something that I can't answer now, but it's absolutely relevant, and yeah, a really good question.
Thank you. Now we'll have one more in the room and then an online question if there's any. Professor, so thank you.
Yeah. As Peter mentioned that there is a huge gap between academia and industry. Academia is at 1 and industry is at 8, 9, 10. Yeah. And that's why we are organizing this SEAM forum to cover that, to fill that gap. So I have 2 questions, 2 whys. One is for industry and one is for academia. For industry, can't we do like that? We offer a 6 months fellowship, 6 months internship for PhD students, so that the industry can treat that PhD students as their employees, so that they can train that person for 2 months and get 4 months of that person as a free employee. So that can benefit industry, and so that they can judge that person that is suitable for their position or not. So this is the one thing. For academia can do, academia can free the students for 6 months so that he can join his internship. So that's my suggestion and question. Thank you.
I love the idea. Firstly, well, actually, I'll start in the opposite order, Virginia. It's not too dissimilar to what we actually try to facilitate for our PhDs. Maybe just reflect on that, and then we'll talk to Peter about the practicalities of an internship.
Yeah, I think the internship opportunities for PhDs do exist. So you should be looking out for those. There is, I think with things like the APR interns.
APR intern, yeah.
There's a slight numbers thing with international versus domestic students. And so that might be something that needs to be looked at. But there are opportunities for internships, and that's certainly something that I think that is really important for your PhD. The thing is, it also depends a bit on your supervisor and how comfortable they are and how much they understand and how many opportunities that they know about and can provide you. And so there is probably an education piece for the academics and for your supervisors as well to provide those opportunities.
Yeah, all the more important that hang on, sorry, we'll we'll respond to the question then to the industry point of view about how to facilitate that kind of an internship structure. What would you need as a business, Peter?
I think it's great. As I said, we've actually got 2 interns doing their graduate, but we would welcome the input. And I think it comes back to the key that collaboration is good. Better collaboration works, and we both benefit from it, because we gain, and also I think the universities gain from knowing some of the problems that university faces. I will give an example at Naval Group, although they're obviously not in the game anymore at the moment here in Australia. They actually looked ahead and were saying that they actually needed skills in X number of years. And so they were going to place a number of people into industry. And I think it's a similar sort of thing from the university's point of view. Be great. And I like your point about industry going into university to see what's happening and at the cutting edge. So I think it works well. Comes back to collaboration and knowing more about each other's problems.
Did you want to touch on this?
Yeah, look, I'd only really affirm what we're saying about probably the preeminent internship program that Australia has had over the last 3, 4 or 5 years, run through the Australian Mathematical Sciences Institute, AMSI, and their PhD internship program called APR Intern. You know, I'd really encourage you to familiarise with yourself with that program. It's been, in my opinion, amazingly successful over a number of years. It was more Commonwealth supported up until just recently. And, you know, I think that Commonwealth support only helped to reduce the hurdle for industry engaging into that program. We've tried to do similar stuff through IMCRC, and yeah, I really firmly believe that as an ecosystem, yeah, that internship concept is really important to facilitate into the future.
Yeah, the government support for some of those placements made it just incredibly cost effective, 50% matching, incredibly cost effective for industry to secure just exceptional talent for a really intensive problem solving. It was just solve this problem and both benefit from this. And then invariably that PhD thing got nicked by that. Nicked. That's a terrible way of me to phrase it. They were selected by that industry partner afterwards and didn't stay to do research with me, but I'm not bitter about that. Are we coming to the end?
We are. Fan might have a question. Could we give him the last one?
Yeah, yep, sure.
All right, thank you. My name is Yu Gong Pham. I'm a PhD student. So the question is for maybe the Global Talent Officer. So because
I don't think they're on the line, are they? Oh, they're still online. Okay.
Okay. So for the PhD after graduation, so let's say they want to apply for the GTI. Is there any preference between a job in industry or the job in academia? Because the PhD want to make the decision if he want to apply for that. Thank you.
Menshu, did you hear that?
We're just trying to unmute the bot.
Okay, wonderful. You're with us. You're with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Look, you have to determine which sector you actually want to align yourself in. Like I said, we do have a number of information guides for the different sectors where you can actually have a look at the list of specializations as well. If you do need additional information from us, please feel free, to send an email to, to myself, Global Talent Australasia at homeaffairs.gov.au. The other website that probably would be good for you to have a look at is the globalaustralia.gov.au. That is the website for the Global Business and Talent Attraction Task Force. And they do have a lot of digital assets and resources there. They do have videos from successful, global talent visa holders. So, it's really up to you to make a decision. We cannot provide you with advice as to, which sector you want to apply for. You just have to determine which one you align with. And then, your skills, your qualifications, and the evidence that you'll be providing will actually be, will be assessed based on that. Is that okay? Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Menshu. Thank you also for making yourself available to further inquiry following. Well, certainly looks like we have some topics to also continue to discuss after this in the room, but I think I'm going to formally close. I'm going to first thank, of course, our guests, Professor Virginia Kilborn, Dr. Jason Coonan, Michelle Tushin, Matthew Manelli, and Menshu Corbett, and of course, Peter Richings. For their time today, I want to acknowledge the support in making today possible. SEAM, the Australian Research Council Industrial Transformation Training Centre in Surface Engineering of Advanced Materials. Can't understand why you call it SEAM, Chris, with the acronym, but SEAM is Australia's premier manufacturing R&D centre that focuses on applied research with tangible outcomes to nurture and cultivate the industrial innovation leaders of tomorrow. And also Vesna, a great thank you for everything today. I hope we have done just that and cultivated and nurtured the industrial innovation leaders of tomorrow. Stay safe. Thanks for joining us.